The 17th Annual Cinema Touching Disability Film Festival presents CTDFF Online, Filmmaker Q&A, Jason DaSilva, Mapping the Disability Trap, and Alison Myers, LOBSTER.
Everybody, I'm Dennis Borrell with the Coalition of Texans with Disabilities. We're the organization that puts on the Cinema Touching Disability Film Festival. Incredibly enough, this is our 17th year doing this. And it's grown into certainly the largest cross-disability film festival in Texas, and it has gone international. So this year, we thought we'd do something different. We thought we'd try doing an online film festival, and I'll let you in on a secret. It wasn't because of the coronavirus pandemic. The real reason we were doing this is we had so many excellent short films entered into our international short film competition that we wanted to do a venue where we could share this excellent work and also highlight the work of these excellent filmmakers. You're going to see a couple of short films tonight. You're going to meet both the filmmakers on each of these. You'll also meet William Greer, who is our film festival director for our entire 17-year run. He's going to be joining us in a little bit too. This is not the only thing. There are 8 more short films on CTD Film Fest online, and I encourage you to go at any time. They'll be up until September 15th. Some of the films might make you smile. Some of the films might be thought-provoking. I can tell you all of them, we hope, will make you consider the humanity of people with disabilities. So with that, I think what we'd like to do is go into our first film, and then we'll speak with filmmaker Jason DaSilva after you see it. So here we go.
Following Mapping the Disability Trap.
Hey, Jason. So
okay.
while we're troubleshooting this film, we'll have a little bit different opportunity here.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask you a few questions while Laura is figuring out our sound, if you don't mind.
That sounds great.
All right, Jason. I know that you're a New York City guy and spending a little bit of time in Austin right now, but
yeah.
Your film is very autobiographical. How did you come to the decision to make such a personal film?
Yeah, so just up for everybody, my name is Jason DaSilva. I'm an Indian man. I'm wearing a white shirt I'm wearing jeans. I'm in a wheelchair. The room around me is an office room. I'm just sitting here at somebody else's house, and I'm excited to speak to you guys. So the reason I'm here in Austin, Texas for the next 6 months, the only reason why I'm here, well, not the only, the reason I'm here is to visit with my son, but I took the coronavirus and the pandemic as an opportunity to travel to Austin, Texas, to be around my son. So while the world is in chaos, I figured there's no better place that I would rather be than in Austin, Texas. So that's why I'm here, and yeah, I'm just letting you guys know that I'm taking advantage of the chaotic times to really be on my own and work on my projects here and be in Austin.
So this is a personal film. So what would you like the audience to take away from your film?
So really, it's a film all about trying to be around my son and realizing through the making of this film that it's actually not as easy as I thought it seems. Because I'm on Medicaid, So I'm on Medicaid, which requires 20, I'm fully quadriplegic, require 24/7 care. I have service from care aides or personal assistants that come. It's like 1-to-1, so that means that they're around me all the time for 12 hours straight, then the next person comes for 12 hours straight. So I'm really lucky that I'm able to get that in here. I shouldn't be lucky, but I'm blessed that I live in New York where I can get that, but I presume that that would be the case around the whole US. But when my son moved to Texas, I realized it cannot be with him because they don't have the same level of care here. So it's not 24/7, 1-to-1 care in the same way. So yeah, it just, the whole film is really about the disparities between the Medicaid system in the 50 states. There's a really good source. It's called Case for Inclusion. Actually, you gave it to me, Dennis. It's called Case for Inclusion by the United Cerebral Palsy Foundation. And it really ranks all states from 1 to 50. And I think actually that Texas is really down there at the bottom. It's not 40, it's not 50th, it's not the worst, but it is 49th in the level of care across 50 states, the level of care for people with disabilities.
Wow. So this is not only your personal story, but it's going to talk about what it is like to be a person with a significant disability in our society, and whether you can get the supports you need to have the choices in life that have independence. You know, I know you're a filmmaker. How is it you're able to, or what accommodations are you using when you're shooting your film?
Yeah, so because I'm unable to use the camera or edit or see the screen really well like I used to, I have to have other people to help me. So other people shoot the film. I can still direct, so I can still tell people what to do and what to focus on, and editing as well. I can work with an editor, so I can direct my films normally, but it's just it's frustrating because I used to be the person behind the camera, but now I have to give it to somebody else that I trust to be behind the camera. Sometimes it'll be my personal care aides. Sometimes it will be close friends. Sometimes it'll be other people that are filmmakers in their own right. So there's a lot of different things that I do to make my films these days.
Awesome. And was there any filmmakers or others in your life that were an influence in your work?
Oh yeah, there's lots of influence in my work. So like everybody from creatives, other documentary filmmakers like Michael Moore, Ken Burns. There is James LeBrecht, who just did a great film for, it was all on the, this camp called Crip Camp. It's on Netflix now. It was the opening film for Sundance. So I know him personally. So these are all people that really paved the way and helped me with inspiration, if nothing else, on my own filming career. So other than that, it's a lot of the people around me are they're instrumental to making my films happen.
Wow, that's amazing. And do you see that there's a larger role in society for films about people with disabilities and made by people with disabilities?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So yes, that's definitely needs to be done more. So there's been a long history of films conveying or showing people without disabilities, portraying people with disabilities on camera. I think there's a film that just came out last year called Cinema of the Freak, I think it was called. It's there's been a few films. Code of the Freak, that's it, Code of the Freak. So there's been a few films that have started really unveiling the history, showing that the hypocrisy of a person without a disability portraying somebody with a disability on camera. And yeah, hopefully in the future, it's changing slowly but surely. But in the future, I would love to see it. So both behind and in front of the camera, people with disabilities were really in charge of playing people with disability roles, and are behind the camera directing and telling their own stories.
Following Lobster.
Well, how many of you thought that was another technical difficulties when there were no images? Come on, fess up. No, that was intentional. So I'm going to kick this over and I'll just introduce Alison Myers, filmmaker of Lobster and more from Australia, and William Greer, our Film Fest director. William, if you'll unmute yourself, and I know you have some questions.
Okay. Hi, I'm William Greer. I'll audio describe myself. I'm white, wearing a black shirt, and I've got a virtual background behind me rather than a picture of my room. Yeah, I started this film festival in 2004, and it's grown. Now it's international, and I wanted to have the online festival to show a lot of the films that people usually don't get to see. I picked this one because it demonstrates audio description, and I think Alison did a great job with this. So, of course, I've got a few questions for you, Alison. What inspired you to make this movie to begin with?
Well, I work in audio description. I'm an audio describer and also a captioner. And for the past 20 years in Australia, there's been this campaign to get audio description on television. And one of the big problems I thought was that no one in Australia has actually heard of audio description. They had no idea what it was. And I thought it would be really helpful to give it a higher profile, to show people how audio description works, how useful it is, and how entertaining it can be. And so a film with a black screen seemed to be the best way to do that. And we have this really big film festival in Australia called Tropfest, and it's incredibly high profile. It gets mainstream media coverage, and the finalists film profiled in the mainstream media. So I thought that'd be a really good chance to get it on, get audio description into like the wider community. Another advantage of the black screen is that it would attract attention, because like Tropfest gets a lot of entries every year, a huge amount. The second advantage of the black screen was it meant we could do anything we wanted to do. Like, it's not like I had to worry about visual effects or costumes or props or budget or anything like that. We did aliens, but we could have had dinosaurs or gone to the Grand Canyon or to another planet or anything. So that was the other advantage. The third advantage is the black screen exactly matches was my abilities as a director. I'm a freelance film editor. I'm not a director. So that made it a bit easier to get all that done. But yeah, and I just wanted to show off what audio description can do, how much action is often involved in describing AD. And we also had a bit of fun with sound effects. We added the vomiting just because it's a nice visceral, not a nice visceral sound effect, but a visceral sound effect that everyone can sort of engage with as much as they might not want to. Yeah, so.
And were any of the actors in your film, did any of them have a disability?
Yeah, it was really important to me because I'm sighted. I don't have a disability, and so it was really important that the blind community and blind people and people with low vision were involved in this. First of all, I was a bit worried that they might be offended by the way I was presenting the person, because it was, you know, a person with a rubber lobster on their head. So I ran this past my blind friends, and I'm involved in working groups with some of the blind organisations in Australia. So I took the concept to them as well, because I did want to use it as part of our campaign to get more AD on television in Australia. And they all laughed at it, and they all said it was fine. So when I was writing the script, I had like my blind friends and representatives from those organisations. They checked the drafts, they gave me feedback, and it was all developed with them. The main character Cam was written with Katie Best in mind. She has low vision, and I knew her through my work with a blindness organisation. And my other friends from that organisation weren't able to be involved, so I asked Katie if she could find some more, ask some of her friends. So all of the friends heckling her at the end are actually Katie's friends, and they are all blind or have low vision. And the hardest thing, what delayed this film for a number of years, was I couldn't find a sound mixer or a sound designer. And over the last few years in Australia, you can go onto groups in Facebook and say, oh, I'm looking for a sound designer, I'm looking for an editor. And I was able to do that. And one of the sound designers who contacted me said he worked in the same building with a composer who was blind, and a really good composer. And so I had a chat to the composer, Matt, and he had a really great voice. So as well as doing the music, we got him to be the audio description voice as well. And that was good. But what really amazed me was, my plan was I would, because we recorded it in our recording booth where we do audio description at work. And my plan was I would feed them their lines and they'd just repeat it into the microphone. But Katie turned up and she had her Braille display, which she had Bluetooth to her phone. And that's how she was reading the script when we recorded her lines. And then when the other guys turned up, Sam owns a small Braille printing company. So she had all her lines printed out in Braille. And Nicole she was wearing an earpiece, and she was listening to the screen reader on her phone read out the script. And Terry was quite happy for me to feed him his lines. But I was just amazed that, yeah, they had all these different ways of being able to read lines and read the scripts and just adapt to what we needed to do on the day.
Have you had any response from the audience, and especially audience who are blind or visually impaired? And if so, what's it been? What have people thought of this?
It actually played at the conference for Blind Citizens Australia last year down in Hobart in Tasmania, and I got a very good response there. They've been very supportive of it, so we posted it. It did not get into Tropfest, which wasn't unusual. As I said, it's a really high profile festival. Lots of films get in there. So we posted it online on the YouTube for TV for All, which is the campaign to get TV audio description on TV in Australia. And the Blind Citizens Australia, Vision Australia, they've all been sharing it. And we've had some it's been really good feedback. It's also in a festival called Wide Angle Film Festival in Australia. And this runs for a year. And so they take the film and they have like a children's program, a corporate program, and that sort of thing. And it tours, so people who are interested in disabilities or films about disabilities, they take these films to schools and businesses and things like that, and screen a selection of films to educate people about disabilities. So LOBSTER has been doing that for since March, which has been, great. So,
have you had any responses from TV stations? I mean, have you had a positive impact?
No, nothing like that. It's actually been interesting this year. At December last year, completely out of the blue, and I mean, I'm on the committees that were involved in campaigning for AD, completely out of the blue, the Australian government announced it was funding audio description on our 2 public broadcasters. So since June, we've actually had audio description on television in Australia. So that's been huge. But no, LOBSTER's been shown online and it's been shown in a few festivals. It's gotten to a few things, including its international debut with you guys. But yeah, no, it hasn't shown on TV or anything. So.
Well, I'm glad to hear there's audio description on TV in Australia. Are there any, does anyone in the audience have questions? Any thoughts or concerns people would like to ask? So I'm certainly ready to open up the question.
William, in the chat box, we have a commentary that the vomiting sounds were absolutely disgusting and very powerful. So which one of your cast members did those?
That was poor Katie. She was very enthusiastic about acting, but she hadn't actually done it before, and I think she found it a lot tougher than she expected. So yeah, I had to torture the vomiting sounds out of her, but she did a great job. Her guide dog also had a cameo. He insisted on being in the booth with us, and he was great, but there was a few grunts and groans and sighs coming from Benny on the odd occasion. So.
So Alison, I had asked these questions a couple of questions to Jason. Have you had any influences in your work?
I'm an editor, so basically, I'm not very good at directing films. So yeah, I like working with lots of different directors and doing what they want to do. But I guess the influences in this one was, it's sort of the audio description I like to do, like, because I write audio description all the time with films, and so I see which kind of films can really benefit from audio description, and it's the action films and comedy films and stuff like that. But yeah, it's I find as an editor, I get inspiration from the directors I work with, because you need to work with their vision and you can't come in with preconceived ideas of what they want to do. And I find that actually works really well with audio description, because we need to work with the film and with the filmmaker's version of the film. And the other thing we need to respect is that it's not it's not the way that we interpret the film. We have to be very careful to be as neutral as possible and to describe the film and describe the characters and their behavior neutrally, and not to impose our interpretation of what's happening on the film. So yeah, and so I sort of I need to adapt myself and my writing style and my editing style to suit a lot of different genres, things like that. So.
It's an interesting comment. I'm acquainted with a number of ASL interpreters for people who are deaf or hard of hearing. They too are essentially neutral with no comment on whatever. They are just there to translate and make the message of the originator of the message understood by the person who's meant to understand it, the message. So the other question I asked Jason, I want to run by you: is there a larger role for films made by people with disabilities and about people with disabilities in our society?
Absolutely, and I just think there needs to be more, having more people with disabilities just in mainstream roles, and not just on films about people with disability. Yes. And roles about people with disability. There was a TV series called Wise Guy that came out, I think it was in the 90s, and one of the major characters in that was a double amputee, and the actor himself had lost both of his legs, and it was part of his character, but it wasn't a big thing. Like they treated it really, really well. And he just did his job. He was he operated telephones. He was the contact for a FBI agent who was undercover. And and it was just a matter of fact thing, and they handled it really well. And I think one of the advantages of having more people with disabilities on screen is it just normalizes it, you know, and it teaches people how to treat them and things like that, because people get very nervous around blind people. Or how do I have more experience with blind people, but people get very nervous about how to approach them and how to start a conversation with them, because we so often use eye contact when we want to start a conversation with a stranger, and so they don't know how to do that. And if you've got more people with disabilities, be it wheelchair, be it deaf or whatever, and you see how other characters interact with them, the people in their everyday lives interact with them, it teaches other people, oh, this is how you do it, this is what you do, this is what to do and not to do. And it also just, and yeah, it just, you know, you find online, particularly people who are blind, you get this, like, I've read in Facebook comments, and there's people say, oh, well, I'm blind and I use this. And there's this thing of disbelief. How can you be blind? You're using Facebook. And people question their abilities. And it's just, well, they can use Facebook, just because you don't know what technology is out there and what they can do. Just because someone's in a wheelchair doesn't mean that they can't go places and do things and do what they want to do. It's just we don't see them doing it. And having it on TV and having it in the media and films is a normal thing. We'll just say, yeah, you know, people with disabilities can do all sorts of different things. And yeah.
So Linda has a question. Linda, you can unmute yourself and ask that question of our Australian champion filmmaker, Alison Myers.
So yeah, my question, if it's okay, goes to both filmmakers. I thought that it was really great to see these two films back to back. To me, they both were really powerful pieces of advocacy. And they're also so different from each other. Jason, yours was just heart-wrenching and really powerful and so concrete. It was, you were really effective at communicating the policy barriers you were facing. And it also just visually was beautiful with the animation mixed in and all that. And Alison, yours took a very different approach, really doubling down on humor. And, you know, initially I didn't realize it was going to be a piece of advocacy at all. It just had a very different trajectory for me. So I'd be interested in hearing from both of you how you, it seems like you both were very clear on your policy goals in doing your films. How did you decide on the approach that you would take in your films?
Did you want to go first, Jason?
Yeah, sure. I'll go first. So I think it was just through trial and error. So I wasn't really, I think it was research first. So that was the big thing. So because it's documentary, so part of documentary is really researching, and part of it is just, because I'm on camera myself, it's just filming and then see what happens. And then scripting everything at the end and editing at the end. So that's the way a documentary is done. So I didn't really have a clear sense of it until they say, for lack of a better word, till the film was in the can. So until I had already filmed everything, till I started editing, yeah, that's when I knew what my look and feel would be for the film.
In terms of why I made it funny, it's really important to have films like Jason's out there, because they just show the reality of life with people with disabilities and how difficult it can be, and just what changes need to be made. In my case, I was trying to attract an audience who doesn't think about disabilities, and just trying to sort of make the point that accessibility features are actually beneficial to everybody most of the time. And so I just wanted to use humor to lure in a different audience, to make them drop their defenses a bit, and so that they don't realize that, yeah, this is a film about, this is actually a campaign film. So I wanted to just use the humor and to have the fun with it, and just to show that, you know, it all sorts of different films. It's not necessarily about people with disabilities all the time, but just to lure them in and then just say, okay, and this is the point behind the whole exercise is that this is an actual accessibility feature that is useful to people with low vision, but can also be useful to you, and just sort of opening that up. And humor was a way of doing that.
So both filmmakers, a question came in through chat, and they want to know what's next for each of you. So Jason, what's next for you? Let's start with you.
Yes, I'm working on the third film of a trilogy of feature-length films that I've been doing. So I did a film called When I Walk, then When We Walk, then the third film is called When They Walk. So it's really looking at accessibility in the world more than anything else. So for people with disabilities, looking at accessibility. And yeah, I'll be doing some work around some of the same issues of New York and Austin, and expanding on this Medicaid kerfuffle, for lack of better words. Yeah, that's it.
So Jason, I want to let you know I'm always available for more cameos in your films.
Oh
So,
yeah, thanks, Dennis. Yeah, you're
Alison,
very good. Yeah.
well, thank you. Alison, what's next for you?
Oh, I'm up to my eyeballs in audio description, actually, which is fantastic. We've been, we're doing 7 hours a week for of audio description for the Australian broadcaster. Hopefully that will continue, but the funding isn't guaranteed beyond the initial funding they've given. So we're looking at a year, and then we just have to wait and see. So the campaigning will continue. And I'm also doing a doctorate in establishing guidelines for quality audio description in Australia. So that's keeping me busy as well.
Well, I've just been told that Alejandrina has a question. And Alejandrina, if you'll unmute yourself and ask away.
Hi everyone. My name's Alejandrina Guzman. Audio description. I'm wearing glasses and a pink shirt and headphones. But I just have a quick question for both of you. Thank you so much for being here. Jason, I saw your film When We Walk back in March for another film festival in Denton, I believe. So thank you. I am physically disabled myself. And when I was in college, I wanted to do filmmaking. But I guess at that time, I didn't have like disabled role models to look up to. So I had no idea it could be done. And I dropped it. And when I see all these films by disabled creators and advocates for the disability community, I just, like, wow, like it's not too late. So if you have one piece of advice for those who still want to seek it out and see how to manage that and navigate it, what would both of you, what would y'all say? And thank you so much.
Oh yeah, for me, just keep it going. So you have the energy and the spirit for it. That's how I first started. I started just strap the camera on and just start shooting and create your films. That's the best way. I think that it's as simple as that.
And networking, getting involved with, find filmmaking groups in the area, things like that, and just make it meet people. That's the biggest thing. I mean, I went to a film school, but the best thing you get out of film school is the contacts you make. And as Jason says, you just got to keep making films. And even the no budget, cheap, horrible student films, you learn so much from that, because you learn how to like workarounds and all that sort of thing. But it's meeting people, getting to know people, and collaborations and all that sort of stuff. But there's film groups, Facebook and all that sort of stuff. And the thing is, you can do it online. I haven't met Anthony, the sound designer, or Matt, the composer, because they're in Newcastle. We did everything on the phone and email. So there's so much that you can do. I don't know most of my editing clients. So even in this era, there's still work you can do.
Okay, fantastic. I know that in the chat box, feedback to filmfest@txdisabilities.org, filmfest@txdisabilities.org. So remember, you can watch these other 8 excellent films through the same login information you got to get on this. And our next Q&A is going to be called Dating with the Disabilities, where we'll be dealing with a couple of the other films and their filmmakers. Those films are Single and Limp. And, you know, this is pretty amazing. This has been I thank you for your patience at the beginning, but this has been amazing. And if there's anything we've learned, well, we've learned many things in the last 6 months, is that communication is incredibly important in changing people's attitudes. And if communication is difficult interpersonally, which it is right now, the value of film and media communications and Zoom communications is only more elevated. So it occurs to me that I have been remiss in not audio describing myself. I'm an Anglo man. I'm pretty gray, you know, gray hair, gray trim beard, kind of gray, actually got gray eyes too, but you can't tell. And I'm in front of a backdrop of the skyline of the city of Austin. You know, another thing that came up is you got to pay your bills somehow. And today's event, as well as the entire 30-day run of Cinema Touching Disability Online, has been covered by our sponsors, as well as our theater event, which will be completely different in October. So if you'll bear with me, these folks need to be recognized, and I'm going to do it in ascending order. We have different levels. You'll soon pick up that the levels were named after theater jobs. At the extra level, the Austin Theater Alliance. Supporting cast level, Mike Shea and Tony Wilcox. The leading cast level, quite a few, Linda Frost. Upstream Technologies, Dallas Webster has been with us tonight. American Construction Investigations, Pharma, Crystal Lions, and the Harry S. and Isabel C. Cameron Foundation. So mouthful. The next level is the director level, Humana and AbbVie. The producer level, our highest level of sponsors, Superior Health Plan, United Healthcare, and AmeriGroup. These people forked over the money for our staff time and technologies and put things together to get this out to people and communicate the humanity of people with disabilities through film. So, William, I'm going to ask if you'll give us the sign off, and I think afterwards, Laura's going to keep the chat open and you can speak among yourselves, or actually the Zoom will be open. So you can speak among yourselves. As she described it to me, think of it as going to the theater and hanging out in the lobby afterwards, talking to people. So you're going to have an opportunity after William signs off to do exactly that. We hope to see you again, and we hope you see the rest of the films. This has been a really nice evening. Thank you very much, all. William, close this out, please. And you have to unmute yourself, by the way.
Well, thank you everyone for joining for the online Q&A. First time we've done this. Well, I'm glad that it went as well as it did. I really liked the questions. I hope everybody really enjoyed this, and we will have a live film festival in October. Well, we hope it will be live. I'm pretty sure it will happen. If it is, I hope that those of you who are able to join us will be able to come and see the live festival. But thank you once again, and I guess we'll turn it over so that everyone can chat among themselves.
Thanks, everyone. I enjoyed it. Have a nice evening.
Thanks, Linda.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Hey, Jason and Allison, a special thanks to you folks. Really appreciate your work and your time this evening.
Thank you for having us.
And by the way, you can unmute yourself if you want to speak to anybody else is on the call.
Everybody's shy.
Come on, Alejandrina, you're not shy.
No. I'm just so thankful for this space. This is really awesome, and it just feels like I'm meeting superstars because I know of these films. So it's awesome to have this accessible way of connecting with people.
Huh? Is that the lady that wanted to make films?
Oh,
Yes.
yes, that's me.
She's a rock star in her own venue. I'll tell you that for sure.
I like her voice.
You know, Alejandra, you're talking about wanting to make films. It reminds me of a film we showed. I'm sure you remember this, Dennis, a few years ago, about people who set up cameras so that people with disabilities could take pictures.
Oh.
Yes, I do
Yeah.
remember that. Still photography. Yeah.
Yes, do you remember the title of that film?
I think it was Shooting Beauty, wasn't it? Shooting Beauty. And
Yes.
it was a phenomenal film, Alejandrina, or anybody still there, if you want to see a terrific
Let's see.
disability film, documentary film. It tells the story of
Oh, I've seen this before.
people with disabilities who do still photography, and many of the subject matters are their fellow individuals with disabilities, and they're quite artistic. Not right, William?
Very
the work
much.
that they do.
And I was going to say, please send me an email, Alejandra, and I can put you in touch with them. And I know a couple of filmmakers who have disabilities that might be able to give you some advice or insight or suggestions. And I'm thinking of Shooting Beauty because the person who started it said, I got to put cameras in the hands of people with disabilities. That's the only way to get an authentic viewpoint about disability. I think that might be a good, one of the good paths you could follow.
Thank you so much. I didn't know I knew I liked photography and filmmaking, but I didn't think it was like something I could do, I guess. But wow, thank you. Yes, I will reach out for sure.
It's not something you need to do when you're young. You know, I think George Miller, who made Mad Max, he was a doctor when he made the first Mad Max film. And, you know, there's lots of people who started their careers like really quite late in life. So yeah, you're way too young already. So you're fine. Yeah. And, yeah, and it's also good to have lived a life outside of filmmaking. So you've got stories to tell, basically. So.
Good evening, y'all. I'll be signing off now. Take care. It's been wonderful.
Bye, Dennis.
Yeah.
Bye, Dennis.
Yeah, and in Austin, we have such a vibrant film community. I mean, so many movie lovers and people that are making films. Like, it seems like all of the networking that Alison was talking about, like, it's even now during the pandemic, like, it must just be, you know, a playground for folks wanting to make movies together.
Sorry, I am listening. I've just got a work emergency going on in the background, so I'm just trying to take care of that.
That's very important.
Man, you get every type of film made here. There's science fiction, there's horror, there's documentary, just all sorts of stuff gets made here.
I do think it's important to have lots of different types of films because everyone thinks of films of disability. They always think of really miserable films for some reason, and they don't have to be like that. You know, Jason's film was inspirational. It had that wonderful animation and all that sort of thing. And, you know, there needs to be a lot more showing a lot more variety in people with disability on screen and behind the camera as well. Yeah.
That's a really good point. I feel like, as at least for me being disabled, and I'm sure many in the disability community, it's like restricted on like just being disabled. It's like, okay, we have more stories, as well as that. But yeah, thank you for that reminder.
But yeah, I just think make films and prove that you can do it, and then they've got no excuse. And it's just, it's like, yeah, look, I've done it. You've seen the film. Go and give me a job, so.
There's actually been some criticism of the TV show called In the Dark, which is about a blind girl whose best friend gets killed, and she investigates who the murderer might be. And there's been a lot of criticism of it, saying, well, it's not fair. You're not hiring a blind actress to play her. And why don't you have a real seeing eye dog playing the part of the seeing eye dog? Well, you look into it a little bit more and you find out that they did have a number of blind people try out for the main part. And even though a blind person wasn't cast in that role, they cast someone who is blind to play another really important part of someone who's blind in the TV series. And they did not use a real guide dog because they have to reshoot the scenes over and over again. And they said, if you tell a guide dog to do the same thing again and again, that's because the guide dog made a mistake.
Mm.
So if we had a guide dog in this role, we'd be confusing him and essentially ruining the dog. And so, sometimes there's legitimate criticism, and sometimes there's criticism that's not completely accurate.
Yeah, one of the issues, I think, because, they want the best performer. They need a good actor in the lead role and experienced performer. But one of the issues is that people with disabilities are just not given the opportunity to perform or to develop the experience that other people have. So I think it needs to start in film school as well, because it's not fair to thrust someone with a disability and, okay, here you are, you've got the major role in this, and when they've had so much less experience, and so they might make normal mistakes that people make, and then they go, oh well, they're hopeless, and it's just, well, no, they didn't have the training, they didn't have the experience, they didn't have the development. So I really think it needs to start at the film school level, and it needs to start at the grassroots level, so that, because that's how filmmakers learn. They make the cheap short films, and they do all that sort of stuff from the beginning. So that's where people with disability, it needs to be built up from that stage.
Yeah, I agree. I see this a lot in running. I don't know if it happens in things like film or fields outside of it, but a lot of times in running, you get people who are really good, and people who do not know them will say, well, you can't be a blind runner. How can you be going that fast? And I wonder if people would see a movie and say, well, someone with a disability couldn't have made that. How could a quadriplegic have made that film? How could this have been done by someone with a disability? And I would love it if it would get to a point where people would see something and be surprised at the content and sort of be shocked and realize that their conceptions were completely inaccurate. And they see, oh, what a great film. I didn't know this was made by someone with a disability.
Yeah, I feel like something that we kind of talked about today was like all of the different ways that filmmakers and actors adapt. And that's a whole interesting story in itself. William, I think yeah, you're right. It would be cool if on the other side of that disbelief was like a curiosity about like, well, how did all these voice actors who couldn't physically see the script like do their lines? Like, well, it turns out sighted people have one way of doing it. If you're blind or low vision, there's like 8. So that's cool, you know?
It's an interesting thing in America. There's a lot more money for audio description in America, and they have blind audio description mixers and blind audio description QCers. And it's not something we can do in Australia because we've got one person doing 3 roles, and you need to be cited for at least one of those 3 roles. But I mean, you know, one of the sound mixers who's very, very famous in audio description circles, and he's apparently one of the best dialogue mixers in the world, and he's completely devoted to audio description, but it's a role that blind people can do. And as I said, you know, Matt's a composer, he's a film composer, and he's blind and obviously can do the job. So yeah.
I think it was mentioned. Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying, I think of the Michael J. Fox show, and he was able to put on a TV show starring someone with a disability, but he was only able to do that because he had a reputation as an actor that he got before he had a disability. And, you know, it would be nice if you could get these roles and get a chance to develop your skills, even though regardless of whether you have a disability or not. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is it's a shame that the only reason he was given a chance to have a show as a person with a disability is that people knew him as an actor for decades before he gained the disability.
The other thing I've noticed is we've got a filmmaker in Australia who basically only has motion in his head. And he's able to shoot and edit his own films because his family's involved. You see his family in the background of his films and all that sort of stuff, and you see his house. And they're obviously quite wealthy, and they can afford to buy him all the equipment that he needs. They can get the software, and he's got pads on the back of his wheelchair, on the head of his wheelchair, that he can use. And those buttons is how he edits the films. But they're able to afford that technology. So that's what this bloke can do. And he does a great job with it. And he's very creative and everything. But all those people who can't afford that technology, you know, what would they be doing if they had access to it? It's the other side of it.
I was just gonna add, I know it was mentioned a minute ago, but also sorry for all the background noise, but a minute ago on activism and filming, and you know, that looks different for everybody, but that's the space I'm involved in, and it's just so cool to see like the intersectionality of everything, of being disabled, and then how film comes in and tells a certain story. It doesn't have to be tied to, you know, a certain issue, but that of course can come up. But I'm so happy I'm here. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons that I feel like CTD has continued doing cinema touching disability is that, I mean, there are many reasons, like there do need to be more platforms for these films and for filmmakers, but also like we're an advocacy organization and there is a role for media to play, and film plays such a huge role in the way that audiences think about their world and themselves and the people in that world. So it is exciting. Like, you know, have you seen Crip Camp?
No, not yet.
Should definitely check it out. It's on Netflix. I don't know.
Yeah, I think we've got it. Honestly, we've been so busy. Ever since the shutdown, we've been inundated with work, which is fabulous. Yeah, but it is on my list. Yeah. So, but that sort of thing is exactly right. And calling it Crip Camp and having it on Netflix and just making it, I'm assuming it's you know, there's a bit of humor, the things I've seen from it, and it just opens it up to people, you know, more people to watch it.
Yeah. Yeah, it
Getting
shows.
Up.
Oh, sorry, William, go ahead.
There's a documentary called Getting Up that's worth watching. It's about a graffiti artist who develops ALS. And eventually he's only able to move his eyes. He's able to continue graffiti because people create software that allow him to control a computer through the use of his eyes. And he enters a graffiti competition and does really well. And the movie shows that he's able to have this software created through shared coding. So he's able to get it for very little money. And I think that that is really worth watching, because you see the contrast between companies that want to charge him hundreds of thousands of dollars and people who are able to just create it collaboratively for very little money.
Yeah. Have you seen the documentary Sand Girl? We audio described it last year. It's a German woman who's in a very similar situation. She's got a little bit of motion in one arm, one hand, and she's got basically her eyes can move. And she's studying like theology and German literature at university. But the documentary was about her family finding out how much ability she actually had, because they originally were told she had no brain and that she was just going to be a vegetable her whole life. And her mother talks about the moment when she realized how intelligent her daughter actually was, and then what they've been able to do to like help her. And she does artwork and she does writing. She wrote this film, she writes poetry, and you know, she's studying at a mainstream university. But you know, just that realization of what she could do, and them figuring out ways that they could help her do what she needed to do. It's a beautiful, beautiful documentary. Yeah.
What is it called again?
Sand Girl.
Girl.
Yeah.
I just pasted a link to more about Getting Up in the chat if you want to
Oh, cool.
know more about that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Pardon me, someone else has decided to join the conversation.
Oh, Najim makes his cameo.
No.
Yeah, one thing that I really love about doing so much stuff on Zoom is I get to see everybody's animals. Like, really like that.
Yeah, the cat said you've ignored me for an hour, so I want to keep it now.
Well, we're coming up on 8:30, which is our hard cutoff. So I will respect his wishes and and release you to him.
Thank you for the conversation and for the invitation. It's been great.
Thank you, Alison. Really enjoyed getting to know you and talk to you.
Thank you so much for joining us.
And thank you for the festival and everything. It's really great to have these sort of platforms.
Thanks. Alejandrina and Dallas, hope to see y'all on the next one.
Thank you. Good night, everyone. Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Cinema Touching Disability thanks our CTDFF online sponsors: AmeriGroup, Heart Intricivic, Superior Health Plan, and United Healthcare.